The developers of Unbeatable raised the requested amount on Kickstarter in less than a day. Back then, the creators promised an adventure focused on story which could be roughly divided into two halves, exploring locations and gameplay in the spirit of rhythm games. Over 4 years later, Unbeatable was released, and it turned out that the story mode heavily favored narrative, with the gameplay feeling like it's just getting in the way. To get the rhythm segments, you have to go to the separate arcade mode, and this separation evokes mixed feelings. In the world of Unbeatable, music is banned. As soon as any composition starts playing, monsters with big mouths and tails called silence swarm to it. The state founded the Harmony and Resonance Management, HARM, whose task is to ensure no one plays music and to fight the monsters if someone breaks the law anyway. There are plenty of such violators. HARM even opened a special prison for captured musicians and listeners of banned tunes. We control a heroine named Bit, who at the start of the game meets a girl named Quaver. Quaver wants to find out what happened to her mother, a singer, and Bit decides to help. They don't get to hang out freely for long. After goofing around at a closed stadium, the characters attract HARM's attention and end up in prison, where they meet 2 other troublemakers. The 4 of them decide to form a band to bring back humanity's love for music and fight back against the pesky police analog. Going through the story mode is tough at first. You fall in love with the graphic style, a old anime-esque cartoon series with VHS vibes, right away. Charming 2D characters run around bright 3D locations. But at every step, there's a feeling that the developers are dragging out time. Either the dialogues are too long, or you're forced to wait and wander from corner to corner, or you have to spend too much time running from one end of the map to the other. Sometimes it's unclear what you're supposed to do or which way to go, and you lose a few minutes if you mess up. And most importantly, there are no story scenes with rhythm mechanics at all until the final chase in the first chapter. Further on, other problems arise. Transitions between story scenes feel cut out. On large locations, there's practically nothing to do except search for an interactive object that leads to the next dialogue. The need to choose responses and make decisions is useless. There's only one ending in the game. Periodic bugs, some already fixed by patches, force you to restart the last checkpoint. And some gameplay episodes have nothing to do with Unbeatable's core mechanic. At the very beginning of the story, you're offered a calibration to ensure the game reads that you're pressing buttons on beat with the music so you can participate in rhythm segments. Plot-wise, you'll have to play a simplified Guitar Hero multiple times to fight monsters or people. However, in story mode, the developers didn't stick to the core mechanic and came up with all sorts of minigames. For example, in one episode, you have to bat baseballs flying at the screen, and at some point, you start suspecting you're doing something wrong. There are so many to hit. But at least there are rhythm elements there, whereas when you're forced in prison to check equipment for malfunctions several times by just reading screen labels, you feel cheated. Especially if after that you're hit with a couple of cutscenes, a few minutes of dialogue, and more runs through unnecessary large locations. It's like buying a first-person shooter where you rarely get to shoot, like shooting is there but you expected something else. By the second half, Unbeatable starts picking up speed. The story becomes clearer, characters are revealed better, and the ending can even make you tear up. In terms of its message, the game is wonderful, an inspiring story about heroes who you grow to like more with each chapter. But to get to the best episodes, you have to fight the urge to turn off story mode and jump into arcade, especially if you've already tried it, bored from the runs and choppy narrative. It's one of those cases where you want to love the game for its style and because it's clearly not just a simple story about delinquent musicians, but the flaws get in the way. You even start noticing little things like the lack of an autosave notification icon. In arcade, it turns out Unbeatable is a wonderful rhythm game that's hard to put down. Controls use 2 buttons and you're not just pressing them for points. With each press, Bit delivers a strike ahead or in a jump. In other words, Unbeatable is a rhythm beat-em-up. Enemies move along 2 lanes at the top and bottom, but that's only half the trouble. They can also come from both sides. Usually you don't have to watch both. The camera focuses on the left or right half of the arena, but it's still sometimes hard to get your bearings and not mix up the buttons. In battles with monsters, you encounter both regular small critters that die in one hit and larger, tougher ones, Some need to be hit twice, first shoving them to the adjacent lane, then finishing them off. Others require multiple hits in a row. Plus, obstacles sometimes appear on the bottom lane which you dodge with an uppercut. And as in all rhythm games, sometimes you need to hold the button instead of tapping. If you release too early, the note is missed. Fights with human opponents change the visuals, but the gameplay mostly stays the same. You still strike from top or bottom. Yes, in terms of mechanics, the gameplay isn't as rich as in the recent rift of the Necro Dancer or other rhythm games, but it's still hard to tear yourself away from Unbeatable. First, the soundtrack is magnificent. Both garage rock and electronica are so good you can get lost in them just in the song selection menu. Second, the cool visual style with bright effects and dynamic animations doesn't get old. And third, arcade has nothing extraneous. Outside of rhythm segments, you only spend time choosing difficulty levels, of which there are several for each track. The higher it is, the faster and more numerous the enemies. On easy, even a kid can beat all the songs, but on higher ones you'd better not blink. So, Unbeatable ends up consisting of two different parts. Even the menus for each mode are distinct and unlike the other. The story takes forever to ramp up, tires with dialogues and needless back and forth wandering, doing anything but what you'd expect from a rhythm game about musicians. Arcade, on the other hand, is completely free of all that, and instead of silly minigames where rhythm often doesn't even matter, offers gameplay you want to return to. It's a hybrid of a walkthrough and a commendable arcade romp that still deserves a positive score. The story isn't hopeless, and its second half is worth getting to. Pros: gorgeous graphic style, excellent soundtrack. Touching story in the second half of story, fun arcade gameplay and rhythm segments, engaging arcade mode with various difficulty levels. Cons: early campaign chapters test the player's patience with choppy narrative and dreary gameplay. Inappropriate minigames in story mode where rhythm sense isn't even needed sometimes.